Right, welcome to Agriculture Live. My name's Rebecca Shields. I'm one of the directors at Agricultural Recruitment Specialists. Now, don't go anywhere. You don't want to miss this episode. It's a great episode because we're going to be diving deep into the theme of trade deals and the effects on UK agriculture and farming. It's a very newsworthy topic at the moment for the future of our industry. If you have got any questions or comments on what we're discussing, please post them in the chat and we'll come to them as soon as we can. So, John, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, good morning, Rebecca. And thanks for asking me to be involved in this session. It's much appreciated, and I hope I've got something sensible and useful and interesting to say to all those people who are listening in. I think there's 190 people in total listening in, which is that's a great number. So look, I'm John Giles. I work for a company called Promar International. We're an agri-food consultancy company. We're quite large. We're about 130 people in the UK, and in turn, we're owned by our parent company, Genus PLC, a large livestock genetics company with about 3,000 people dotted all around the world. I've been with the company quite a long time, Rebecca, as you know. I had a bit of a shock on LinkedIn when it said, John, you've been there 30 years. But I joined the company at exactly the right time when the Berlin Wall came down, and found myself going out to Eastern Europe and other places, further and further east, Russia at the time, Ukraine. And I've been very lucky. I've never really stopped traveling, and I've been to about 60 countries around the world, working on a whole range of projects in the agri-food sector, and obviously something that's been keeping people very preoccupied over the last 5 years, maybe more, is the whole issue of trade deals.
Yeah, I bet you've got a few stamps in your passport, John.
There's one or two there, Rebecca.
So we've had you here before. We know that you're a great, key fountain of knowledge, and I'm sure a lot of people listening will take some key points away from our chat today.
Yeah.
So we're going to be talking about trade deals and the effects on UK and agriculture and farming. So could you just firstly give us a bit of a recap of the last 5 years and what's been going on?
Yeah, well, we could be here for the rest of the day talking about that, Rebecca, but I'll try and keep it short. I think I'll go back a bit further than 5 years, actually, because if you think about it, we actually, the UK decided to leave the European Union in 2016. So almost 10 years ago now, and we're still feeling the after effects of that decision. We finally actually left Europe in 2020. But we took most of that. It took 4 years to sort of decide, having made the decision to leave, it took 4 years to actually make that happen. And then we spent most of 2020 between January and December sort of working out further fine detail. So that's been a massive change, because obviously Europe is, first of all, it's our biggest export market for agriculture and food products, but also it's the biggest source of imports for us. And there's been all sorts of trade friction issues related during that period, which particularly have impacted on smaller companies, I think. But we now have signed an agreement on SPS, and that is yet to be fully finalised. But that will take away a lot of those trade friction type issues. In Europe, we've still got no tariffs. We've still got no quotas. And there's still 450 million people in Europe. So I think Europe, if we can sort of bottom out this SPS agreement, will still be a very, very important market for the UK, and a source of supply, not just in the short term, but maybe for the longer term as well. But obviously, one of the whole points of Brexit was to be able to develop our own trade relationships or trade deals with other people, other countries around the world. So we started off with the Oceania countries. They're fairly small markets in the overall scheme of things. So New Zealand, a population of about 5 million, and Australia is about 25 million. So they're not massive markets. But obviously part of the purpose of a trade deal is it has to work both ways. So there is concern in the UK that we'll get more imports of New Zealand and Australian dairy and meat products in particular. That hasn't really happened yet, but obviously the opportunity is there to do it. And then beyond the Oceania countries, we've done quite well. We've now got 40 trade agreements in the UK of our own. Some are more significant than others, but the amongst the big ones, in Asia, the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement on Trans-Pacific Partnership. It's always a bit of a mouthful, but that covers 12 countries across the sort of ASEAN type markets. It looks as if we're going to get a trade deal sorted out with India. And obviously India, 1.4 billion people. People talk about the Brexit dividend, and we don't need to be reliant on Europe anymore. I think Europe will still be very important to us, but these are markets: India, the Asian markets, the US market. It looks as if we're moving towards a trade deal there. We'll still probably have a 10% tariff on UK products. But we're probably better off in agriculture and food than maybe the steel industry or the car industry. So it's all relative. And again, there's the opportunity for American exporters to trade into the UK, and that might be with beef or pork or soybeans or poultry or fruit. So there has to be, one of the whole things is you can't have it. It can't be just a one-way thing. We have to accept that other countries will look at the UK market as an attractive market. And then other trade deals, the Gulf region, Saudi Arabia, UAE, these sorts of places. Japan, we have a sort of rollover agreement with what we had when we were part of the European Union. So there's been a huge amount of change, huge amount of uncertainty at times as to what's going to happen next, basically. But it's been an incredible, whether we say it's 5 or 10, it's been an incredible moment in time, I think, for the UK, and that includes farming and food.
So what is the rest of the world doing, and how do we relate in the UK?
The rest of we've been very active. There was concern, I think, at the time we left Europe that we weren't really cut out in the UK to develop trade deals or negotiate trade deals. We didn't have the experience. I think, sort of slightly tongue-in-cheek, one or two countries around the world said, we can provide you with the expertise you're going to need. But we've done quite well. We've negotiated 40 trade deals since we left Europe. But compared to Europe has 70. So we've got a bit of, if we want to get back to parity with our European counterparts, there's still quite a lot of work to go. Countries like Hong Kong, Singapore, New Zealand, Peru and Chile are all very active in developing free trade deals, and they're very good at doing that, basically. And then the biggest countries involved in trade deals, I've already mentioned Europe with their 70 agreements around the world, but China and the US in particular, they haven't been sort of letting us have a free run at this. They are also very active in negotiating trade deals around the world. So it's a busy place.
It sounds like it. So tell us, what is the impact on, say, UK exports on the agri-food products?
UK exports have been doing pretty well over the last couple of years. I say Europe is still important, and there's been a decline in trade to Europe, and that's largely been down, I think, to two reasons: the sort of trade friction type issues I mentioned earlier on, but also maybe just some uncertainty amongst the European customers as to what the UK is really up to and how important is Europe going to be for us. And but the growth we've seen is coming from other parts of the world, often from a relatively low starting point, but places like the Middle East and Southeast Asia and the US and whatever. We've done quite well in those markets, and the challenge obviously will be to carry on doing well. I always think, Rebecca, that having market access is one thing, but you also need to have market knowledge. And so there's countries like Indonesia, take that for example. On paper, it looks like a fantastic market. 275 million people, fast growing middle class, the economy's growing at 5 or 6% a year. So we could get access to Indonesia, and hopefully we will at some stage in the future. But then you need to have companies in the UK who sort of wake up on a Monday morning and think, we're going to be in Jakarta this week. And you need to understand the market size, the market trends, who the competitors are, how do consumers think and behave. and where does the UK fit in? So having negotiating market access is great, and the
Mm.
government will say, well, look at all the great things we're doing, and isn't that good? And it is. But then you need companies to start on Monday morning and say, right, exports are our priority, and within that we've identified certain markets, and we're going to find out and learn a lot about those markets. Because if you go to somewhere like Indonesia, who do you find there? You find the Australians, the New Zealanders, maybe the Irish, the Germans, the French, the Dutch, the Americans. We're not always the first cab on the rank, and so we got a bit of making up to do.
I'd say so. So what would you say, if you could say, out of all the different markets, would be the best for UK agriculture going forward?
In terms of exports,
Yeah.
that's a really good question, but I'm not sure there's sort of being a consultant, we sort of try and make things sound a bit more complicated than they are sometimes, Rebecca. But it depends a little bit on the nature of the company, the size of the company, the export experience of the company, and also what their aspiration is going forward. But I think, look, Europe, I think, if we can bottom out these SPS agreements, Europe will still remain a very, very important market for us. But look at these markets um, in India, in the US, in Southeast Asia, in parts of the Middle East. They're all attractive for some reason.
Mm.
Some have to be more attractive for the other, and they can't all be the most attractive. So I'm not sure the perfect market for the UK exists.
Mm.
But it will depend on individual circumstances. But I think the good thing I would think is that we've got lots more options these days.
Mm. And do you think that the trade deals that have been done have been in favour of agriculture and farming?
In the UK,
Yes.
time will tell, Rebecca. The impact of trade deals sometimes takes a number of years to actually see the full impact of this, basically. And in some cases, you can get into a situation, would that have happened anyway without a trade deal? But obviously, a trade deal does facilitate additional imports and exports. I think, there's no doubt people are concerned about the Oceania countries, and also maybe the US, which has a huge agricultural sector. It's highly competitive. They're pretty good at exports in the US. The USDA has an export fund. Mr. Trump might have something to say about that in the future, but historically they've had a fund called the Market Access Program, which is about $200 million a year to help people in the US export. So it's well funded. I suppose the concern about the US is around things like beef and soybeans and poultry, and we've heard lots of, but they can produce these products very competitively. But not all American beef is hormone treated. Not all American soybeans are GM modified. Not all US poultry is washed in chlorine, and so on and so forth. And so forth. Therefore, market access is one thing, but again, it's how American companies view the UK market. They've been busy developing exports in other parts of the world. They might look at the UK. A lot will depend on what the customer decides. So it may be that technically we're allowed to import American beef, but if supermarkets and food service companies say, no, we don't want to do that, and if their consumers say we're not very keen on that idea, American companies might find it hard work. And we do know that they find the way that the British import and retail food service sectors operate is quite challenging.
And where do you think our biggest strengths lie in terms of dealing with the rest of the world?
I think our biggest strengths are in the quality of our products, basically. I don't think there's any need around the world for any more low quality products. The markets we've been talking about, whether they're India or the US or the Gulf region, and even within Europe and certainly in Asia, they want the best of the British products that we have. So our inherent high product quality and reputation, and to some extent image. We've got a great image to play on, basically. And so I think those are the things that we need to build on. The slight concern is, how export orientated are we in the UK? And have our companies really got the bit between the teeth on exports? Some have, but many haven't, and that's because they're sort of fully occupied supplying the domestic market.
Mm. So what do you think then, as an industry, that we need to do in order to really maximise all of the opportunities?
I think we need to concentrate on our inherent quality. We probably need a clear strategy about where we want to go. We've got all these markets opening up around the world, including on our doorstep, Europe. But we talk about at Promar, we've done lots of work on helping people prioritize markets. So we talk about markets that are either maintain markets or build markets or invest markets or markets that might remain sort of slightly opportunistic in their nature. So we need to be able to work out which part of the world fits in these four categories, and then act accordingly, basically.
Is there, a way of getting like the industry together to, look at targeting some of these countries effectively?
There's lots of people who can help. There's organisations like the AHDB do some great work in international markets. You've got organisations like the Food and Drink Exporters Association. It gets a bit complicated because you've got people in Scotland, and obviously with our devolved government structure here, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland sometimes have other priorities. And there's always a bit of a debate about, do you promote as Britain, under the Union Jack basically, or do you promote as Irish, Scottish, or Welsh? So, but that's not impossible to sort that one out and get the best of both worlds, maybe. But I think we need a sort of clear export strategy. As you go to lots of other countries around the world, and they know where they want to go. I sometimes think in the UK, in amongst all this change that's been going on over the last 5 years, and all the excitement of these new trade deals, we haven't clearly worked out, of these four market types: build, maintain, invest, opportune, where certain countries fit in. And so there's no shortage of people or organisations who can help. DEFRA themselves, as I said, the AHDB, Food and Drink Exporters Association, and so on and so forth, and individual trade associations. But we all need to come together under one banner, really.
So go on. Sorry, John.
I would say, so yeah, we look strongest when we act in a united fashion, rather than everybody going off doing their own thing.
Okay, and so where does all of this lead in terms of the trade deals? What are the overall effects? Give us a good rundown, John.
I think the overall effect is that there's an opportunity for us to be much more export orientated. But as I said, in the case of all these trade deals, it's a two-way thing. So we need to be prepared for other people. The UK is an attractive market for many people around the world. 65 million people. The routes to market are pretty clear. We're maybe not quite as wealthy as we were 5 years ago, Rebecca, but it's still, the UK is still a wealthy market. It's still seen to be able to. We've done work with people all around the world, and they say that if we can supply a UK retailer in particular, or the UK food service sector, that's almost like a badge of honor, and it means that we can go to people in other parts of the world and say, look, if we're good enough for the UK retail system, we'll be good enough for you. So we have to expect that other countries will find the UK market attractive. So it will make a more competitive situation. And as we open up into new markets, we will come up against the best of the best, be it people from New Zealand, Australia, or America, or Ireland, or France, or Holland. We will be, UK companies will be more exposed to the real sort of, at times, white hot heat of international competition. So we will need to up our game.
And how do we do that?
Well, there's all sorts that we could be here for the rest of the day talking about that one, Rebecca. But I mean, there's a number of things. One thing we've got in the UK as well, we've got very good environmental and sustainability credentials. And that is increasingly important around the rest of the world. So it's not only people who've got good products and good service and good prices. Those are almost taken for granted. But these days, people want to know, what are your environmental or sustainability credentials? And that's where the UK, I think, it's always dangerous to say we're the best, but we're certainly not the worst at that. And we've got a strong track record in there. But yeah, we will be up against the best of the best.
And are we too late with some of the, where Australia have got in, or New Zealand?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I don't think you're ever too late. Look, being the prime mover advantage, as sometimes people use the phrase, that can be a dangerous situation, because you make all the mistakes before everybody else, and then people watch you and copy you and learn from you. But yeah, so again, if we looked at Southeast Asia, countries like Australia and New Zealand, they've been operating in those markets for probably 20, maybe 30 years. So do they have an advantage over us? Yes, they've sometimes got their own companies on the ground in those. When we were in Indonesia, we were looking at the dairy sector, and Fonterra from New Zealand have got 3 factories there. Almost 1,000 people employed. So they are firmly ensconced on the ground. But at the same time, most people around the world want options.
Yeah,
want options, and I think with not least, and so why can't the UK be an option? And if I don't think the UK is ever going to be a mass market supplier in these export markets. I think we're going to be relatively niche, but we're going to trade on our high quality, good environmental sustainability credentials, and so on and so forth. So I don't think we're sort of we haven't got enough, we're not big enough to sort of take over the world in the way that maybe the US and China and 1 or 2 other countries are. So I think we'll be a bit of a niche player in some of these markets, but niche players can be very profitable if you get it right. So I don't think it's ever too late. People always want options for other suppliers, and people always want new suppliers.
So if you're a company in the UK, you've only been trading in the UK, what would you say to them if they want to, start to venture into the rest of the world? Where would you tell them to start? What would they do?
Historically, people in the UK have started in markets that are quite close to home, and that's not uncommon around the world. So, if you look at in Europe, for example, which is our closest and still our biggest market, people often start in countries like Holland or Sweden or Ireland in particular, before branching out to go into markets. I sometimes get it's India and China and these Asian markets can all sound incredibly attractive, incredibly exciting, and they are, but they're usually better suited to companies and organizations who've earned their spurs in other markets around the world first. To go into China as your first export market, or India as your first export market, that's like going from the Cub Scouts to the paratroop regiment, really, Rebecca. And
so start local.
Probably start local, but I think the main thing, look, we're a bit biased at Promar because it's what we do here, is you need to understand the markets. So before doing anything, you need to sort of probably do your homework on, is it the Middle East? Is it Saudi Arabia or the Gulf? Is it Ireland? Is it Holland? Is it markets further afield? But you need to do your homework and find out as much as you can about the market. You need to become an expert on these markets. And to be an expert on all these markets is quite challenging. So you need a sort of quite a high degree of focus. And there's all sorts of ways you can do that. There's lots of information that can be gathered about these markets, but you need to understand the market. And I think when companies go to these markets, the people they're going to be talking to, they expect you to already know something about their market, or maybe in some cases quite a bit about your market. So being well informed, I think, is really important.
And understanding the culture as well, and traditions, and how business is done.
Yeah, all those things. So you've got the sort of big macroeconomic indicators: how many people, how wealthy are they, economic growth, and all these sorts of things. But yeah, understanding the structure of the market, consumer behavior, competitor behavior, and all these things. You need to build up it's a bit like doing a jigsaw in some cases, Rebecca, but you need to sort of complete the jigsaw and then make your move on the basis of knowledge and some strength, rather than hoping sort of in some ways almost hoping for the best. They're bound to like our products, aren't they? They might do, they might not.
Absolutely. Thanks, John. So where do you think, or what do you think is the biggest issue going forward in agriculture aside from this? What do you think is going to be the next big thing that everyone's going to be talking about?
Well, I think there's a number of things. One thing that could change everything over the next few months is the whole situation regarding Trump tariffs.
Mm.
So not only will there be tariffs on the UK products, but there could be, you know, as we know, Mr. Trump seems to be able to sort of change his mind quite regularly about what he might want from these arrangements. But yeah, the relationship between the US and China is particularly important. You know, they're both major powerhouses in world agriculture and food. So what they do ricochets, what they do and what they don't do ricochets around the rest of the world. But there's so, you know, so many things going on at the moment, Rebecca. So you might start at the top and say things like climate change will still continue. That's not, you know, regardless of any trade deals or not having trade deals or having 10% or no percent or whatever. You know, the impact of climate change in the UK and around the world will carry on. That's not going to stop for anything. And I think also the use of agri-tech products, services, solutions, that's got the ability to change agriculture and food around, not just in the UK but around the world. And then you can bring it back down to much more local things in the UK, so things like inheritance tax and these sorts of things, which don't make life easy for farmers at all.
Absolutely not. So what a great discussion, John. Thank you for that. You've definitely highlighted some key things to consider there, and it was great to have, you know, your insights today. Have you got anything you'd like to add, John?
I think I'll try and keep this brief, Rebecca. But well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to do it, and I hope people have enjoyed or found what I've had to say interesting. If anybody, it doesn't have to stop here at sort of 10:30 on Thursday morning, Rebecca. If anybody wants to get hold of me, they can do that through you, presumably, or you'll find me on LinkedIn and one or two other things, or through the Promar website. So we're always happy to carry on the conversation. Half an hour is not that long to cover, you know, what is a huge subject. But I'd say, yeah, there's been a very big change over the last. Is it 10 years? Is it 5 years? Somewhere in between, maybe. But there's, you know, lots of change going on. That causes some uncertainty. Uncertainty for some companies can actually produce opportunity. So I think we have to remain positive about what's going on, but also accept that not everything will always, you know, it can't all be in the favor of the UK. We're going to have to accept that, you know, the whole point of trade deals is that they're meant to be a two-way benefit. So if we do a trade deal with the US, there has to be some benefit to the US industry as well. And agriculture and food is often a major part of these conversations beyond financial services, cars, steel, and what have you. I think you know, to understand what's going on here, there needs to be some investment in understanding market structures, policy issues, the direction of travel, and all these sorts of things. And you know, that's where Promar helps clients. And also you need good, you know, beyond anything else, Rebecca, you need good people to do all this. And presumably that's where you come in, Rebecca, because your stock in trade.
We can find them. That's not a problem.
Yeah, your stock in trade is finding good people to help, you know, for your clients.
Absolutely.
So yeah, huge change, some uncertainty. Uncertainty can bring opportunities. And again, you've only got to look at the scale of some of these markets. You're getting a free trade deal with Liechtenstein doesn't really count, really, you know. But getting a trade deal with some of these mega markets, you know, the ones in Asia, India, the US, and sorting out the relationship with Europe. Europe's still got 450 million people there, and they are relatively wealthy. So there are some big gains, big wins to be had.
Absolutely. So would you like to say goodbye, John?
I could go on the rest of the morning if you wanted me to, Rebecca, but I will say goodbye. I know people are busy. I'd just like to say thank you for people to joining us this morning. Thank you, Rebecca, for setting all this up. And if anybody wants to carry on talking to myself or my colleagues at Promar about these sorts of issues, then feel free to do so. We enjoy the conversation.
Absolutely. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Thanks, John. Keep following us. We've got some great new topics coming up. If you've got a topic in agriculture that you would like to talk about, please contact me at Agricultural Recruitment Specialist, which is www.agrirs.com. And if you would like to hear more on new issues and topics within the agricultural and farming industry, you can follow us on various channels, including Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts. Just look up Agriculture Live. So that's all from us today. Thanks for joining and goodbye.